Welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to new stories every day. Noah and Emily had the kind of marriage that everyone around them admired. They were high school sweethearts, partners who seemed to share everything, from future dreams down to their favorite midnight snacks. Noah was the steady, reliable sort, the one who'd always show up if you called him at 3 a.m. Emily, on the other hand, was driven, warm, and ambitious, radiating a sort of energy that drew people in. Over the years, they built a life together, a home that practically hummed with the sound of laughter and the comforting notes of domestic life. But as Emily's career in corporate sales began to rocket forward, the foundation of that once unbreakable marriage started showing tiny, almost invisible cracks. Noah worked in finance, a field where stability and predictability were the norm. He clocked in and out at the same times, and he was home for dinner nearly every night. Emily, however, had scored a high-paying position at a fast-growing tech company, accompanied by long hours, constant work travel, and a schedule that could change at a moment's notice. In the beginning, Noah told himself he didn't mind. He was proud of her success and wanted to support her. He took care of things at home, offered a listening ear, and reassured her that no matter what happened in her demanding job, he'd have her back. But sometimes, late at night, he noticed a kind of distance forming between them. A subtle cooling, like a door quietly closing. One Friday evening, Emily walked in unusually late. A faint aroma of wine lingered on her clothes. She giggled to herself before regaining composure, cheeks slightly flushed. Noah had been reading in the living room and glanced up in concern. "Hey," he said, setting his book aside. "You okay? You're home later than usual." She brushed off his worry with a quick wave of her hand. "We had a team happy hour. I didn't realize it'd get so festive," she said with a lopsided grin. She planted a kiss on his cheek, but didn't elaborate. There was a hint of distance in her eyes that made Noah's stomach clench. Emily had always been transparent, even chatty about her day, so this new vagueness unsettled him. Weeks passed. Her absences became the norm: late-night work dinners, after-hours, team bonding sessions, weekend business trips. Noah tried to focus on the positives. Emily's career was soaring, and he reminded himself that he promised to support her. But he couldn't shake the tiny voice in his head whispering that something was off. She often came home distracted, the details of her day vague or glossed over. Whenever he probed, she brushed his questions aside, saying she was simply exhausted. New Year's Eve loomed on the horizon. Noah hoped they could spend it quietly, just the two of them, watching the ball drop, sharing champagne, and talking about everything they were grateful for. They'd always loved low-key celebrations at home. But on the morning of December 31st, Emily mentioned an invitation she received to a huge office party at her boss Brandon's mansion. An annual bash that was, in her words, the networking event of the year. "It's a big deal, Noah," she explained, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Everyone from the office is going to be there. Brandon told me it's practically mandatory if you want to keep moving up. You understand, right?" Noah's stomach churned. He'd met Brandon at a few company gatherings, a charismatic, sharp man with an undeniable air of command. He also had a habit of lingering looks at Emily, though she always seemed to take it in stride. Despite Noah's misgivings, he trusted her. He forced a smile. "Of course I understand," he said. He even offered to join her, but Emily insisted it was strictly for employees. That night, as midnight approached, Noah sat in the living room alone. In the distance, he heard fireworks from the neighbors and muffled parties next door. The phone rang with calls from friends and family wishing him a happy new year, but Emily's absence cast a cold shadow over the celebration. He tried to call her, but she didn't answer. By 2 a.m., as the fireworks died down and the streets quieted, Noah's phone finally buzzed with a text from Emily. The message read, "Just leaving now. Had too much champagne, but Brandon is giving me a ride home. See you soon. Love you." A wave of nausea hit Noah. Something in that text felt wrong. Brandon driving her home in the early hours of New Year's Day was not a comforting thought. When Emily arrived, she was obviously tipsy. She giggled about champagne, fumbled with her keys, and slurred a half-hearted apology before collapsing onto the couch. Noah looked at her, a hollow ache blooming in his chest. He tried to push the unease away, telling himself it was just the wine, just an innocent ride home. Yet the suspicion, once planted, refused to leave. In the weeks that followed, Emily's behavior became more evasive. She'd often be texting late into the night, the phone cradled close to her chest if Noah ventured near. One night, while she showered, a notification lit up her screen on the bathroom counter. Noah saw the name, Brandon. His pulse quickened. He picked up the phone, heart pounding, and unlocked it. Guilt gnawed at him for violating her privacy, but that uneasy voice screamed that something was seriously wrong. The messages confirmed his worst fears. Brandon had been sending flirtatious, sometimes explicit texts for weeks. What devastated Noah most were Emily's replies, which reciprocated that flirtation and even hinted at a deeper connection. One thread in particular caught his eye. "Last night was amazing. Let's do it again soon." The date showed it was from the night of the office party, New Year's Eve. That line seared itself into Noah's mind like a brand. He returned the phone to its spot, feeling physically ill. The woman he loved, the one he believed would never betray him, had done exactly that. He sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, tears welling in his eyes as he tried to process the betrayal. The next few days he moved through life in a haze, unsure when or how to confront her, uncertain if he wanted to hear whatever excuse she might offer. On a chilly Saturday night, while Emily was out for yet another work event, Noah resolved that he wouldn't merely confront her. He'd make her face the same devastation he felt. He decided to leave, to vanish in a way that would leave no doubt how deeply her betrayal had cut him. Stealthily, he gathered documents and transferred savings from their joint account to a private one in his name. It pained him to do it, but he felt he had little choice. He also rented a storage unit, quietly packing away the majority of his belongings, old photo albums, personal keepsakes, anything that truly mattered to him. He wanted to leave behind a stark, empty house, a house stripped of every sign of the life they shared. He printed screenshots of the incriminating texts, sealed them in an envelope, and placed them on the kitchen counter. On top of the envelope, he left his wedding ring. Accompanying both was a succinct note scrawled on plain paper. "I know everything. Goodbye." 1 year to the day since Emily first stumbled home after Brandon's New Year's Eve party, she prepared to head to yet another social function with her coworkers. She told Noah she might not be home until late. He nodded, expression neutral. She offered him a half-smile, perhaps sensing tension in the air, but dismissing it. The moment the front door closed behind her, Noah sprang into action. He loaded his packed suitcases into the trunk of his car, did a final walkthrough of the house, and paused only briefly in the living room. That space, once full of love and warmth, now felt suffocating. With a final exhalation, he left. Emily returned a little after midnight, expecting to find Noah asleep or at least reading. Instead, she was greeted by chilling silence. The house felt unnaturally still. She called his name once, then again, voice echoing. She flicked on the living room light, eyes widening as she registered the emptiness. Nearly all traces of Noah were gone. The photos of them at the beach, the painting he loved, the coffee mug he used every morning. Her breath caught in her throat when she reached the kitchen. There, in the center of the counter, lay the envelope, the ring, and the note. Hands shaking, she tore open the envelope. The screenshots of her text with Brandon spilled onto the counter, revealing every damning word. Her vision blurred with tears. The short note, written in Noah's neat handwriting, confirmed that he discovered everything, and that he decided to leave. Emily sank to her knees on the cold kitchen floor, phone in hand, desperately calling him. Her calls went straight to voicemail. Panicked texts, frantic apologies, pleas for him to come home. None were answered. The days that followed were a nightmare for her. The morning after, she showed up at Brandon's office, hoping for some semblance of comfort or a plan. Brandon was polite but distant, clearly uninterested in any serious involvement. The thrill for him had ended the moment their secret was exposed. Faced with that harsh reality, Emily felt the bottom fall out of her world. Noah, meanwhile, had relocated to a nearby city, a few hours away, where an old college friend offered him a spare room. In that new environment, he began piecing his life back together. He found a job in a local financial firm, slowly forging a fresh path. The heartbreak still throbbed, but he threw himself into new routines, leaning on supportive friends and family members. Some nights he awoke from fitful dreams of Emily, remembering happier times. But then he recalled the messages or the look in her eyes when she came home that drunken New Year's Eve, and a steel resolve would return to him. Word got around through mutual acquaintances. Emily was miserable, trying to salvage her personal life in the aftermath of Noah's disappearance. She might have tried to fix things, but with the evidence of her affair out in the open, she had little recourse. She wrote him a letter a few months later, detailing her regrets, her longing for forgiveness, and her wish to see him just one last time. She wrote about the emptiness in the house, the echo of every memory she now had to face alone. She begged him for a conversation, a chance to explain. Noah read her letter in silence. By then, he felt more like himself again, or at least a version of himself that had grown stronger through pain. He didn't feel the surge of anger or heartbreak he once had. What lingered was a calm sense of closure. Emily's words, full of regret, couldn't undo the betrayal. They couldn't bring back the trust he'd once had in her or erase the lonely nights he spent imagining her in Brandon's arms. He decided to respond carefully and concisely. He thanked her for the apology and expressed that he hoped she would find a better path forward. But he made it clear he would not be returning, nor would he meet to rehash the past. He managed to start anew and refused to jeopardize that fragile peace. In the final lines of his letter, he scrawled words that captured it all. "I loved you once, but I love myself enough to leave you behind. Sometimes leaving is the only justice. It ended there. Emily was left holding a letter that severed the last thread of hope she clung to. Noah, on the other hand, moved on, cautiously optimistic that someday he might trust again, might even open his heart to someone new. It was a slow, arduous process, but the sense of freedom he felt in forging his own path was something he carried with him for the rest of his life. In the aftermath of such betrayal, each day became an exercise in rediscovery for both of them. Noah discovered resilience he never knew he had. Emily discovered the depth of the consequences that come with deceit. Though their stories had been intertwined for so long, they'd reached a point where continuing together was impossible. That final decision, Noah's choice to leave to remove every piece of himself from the house, was the truest reflection of his own worth. A testament that though love can be strong, betrayal can overshadow it just as powerfully. He learned that sometimes the greatest act of self-preservation is to walk away from the person who breaks your heart so thoroughly, no matter how many years of history lie behind you. For Emily, it was a lesson in loss. She had lost the man who once considered her his world, a man who would have done anything for her success. The days of strolling hand in hand, the comfort of quiet nights spent watching movies, the shared breakfast on weekends. Those were now memories she carried alone, tinged with regret and the unwavering knowledge that she'd let it all slip away for the sake of a fling. Despite the pain, or perhaps because of it, life moved on for both of them. People who knew them as high school sweethearts shook their heads in disbelief at how everything had ended. But as Noah liked to remind himself, everything ends eventually. Some stories just have sharper, more painful conclusions. Months later, rumors surfaced that Brandon had found someone else in the office to flirt with, continuing his predatory pattern. Emily, now wise to the hollowness of such affairs, focused on rebuilding her own life, though without Noah at her side. She saw him once from a distance at a mutual friend's event. He seemed at peace, smiling gently in a conversation with old friends. She was tempted to approach, but one look at his calm expression told her that she no longer belonged in his world. And so they both carried on, forging different paths. Noah discovered a quiet sort of happiness in a simpler life and trusting himself again. Emily learned the hard way that no professional success or momentary excitement could replace the deep, abiding love she had taken for granted. In the end, the house where they once lived stood empty for a while before eventually finding new owners, people who knew nothing of the heartbreak that had occurred within those walls. Time has always continued its steady march, softening the edges of old wounds, but never fully erasing them. Thus concluded the love story of Noah and Emily, a cautionary tale of how quickly trust can unravel when ambition and temptation collide, and how sometimes the only real justice you can grant yourself is to walk away from what used to be and embrace the unknown that lies ahead.